Hi everyone, welcome back to the Watch Insider. My name is Brian and thank you for logging on. I hope everybody had a wonderful New Year celebration. I'm joined today by Tim Masso and we have an exciting show for you tonight. So I hope everybody's staying warm, those that are here on the East. Is it just the East Coast that's cold? I don't think so. I think it's like the whole country right now. I'm hearing Florida has, you know, palm trees are freezing.
I think the entire country at this point pretty much has icicles.
Yeah, so, and we've got an Arctic bomb on the way, so plenty of time for everybody to log in and watch our videos. So we've got an exciting show tonight with the new year here. I thought it was the prudent time to talk about perpetual calendars because, you know what, why not? There's only 2 times a year where it's fun to talk about perpetuals. It's New Year's and every 4 years for leap year. So we're hitting, you know, we're hitting one of the two. So I guess to start us off, why don't we start with a quick wrist check and then we can move along to the goodies on the table.
Yeah, definitely. Let's do a quick wrist check. I'm actually going to hand model my watch since it's always a bit easier to do it this way. This is my Grand Memovox. You guys know this watch well. It was on my wrist for the turnover of the year. The fun thing about these watches with the Kurt Claus perpetual module is you really do get to see the year turnover. If you note right there at the register at 12 o'clock, there is a little 18 in there. And this watch, of course, also alarm is a great way to ring in the new year.
Beautiful piece. You were rocking that last week too, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I figure it was an end-of-year kind of watch, perpetual calendar. This is the time of year when it makes most sense.
I actually don't own a perpetual.
You don't?
No, so it's on a bucket list.
It's like my favorite complication, along with the alarm. Enough of that.
So here I have, yeah, I'll let you hold it. So here I have a 39mm Royal Oak Chrono with a blue dial. I think I wore this last week as well. I'm starting to now think about watches in terms of, did I wear it on the prior show or not? But this was a watch, honestly, that I was thinking about trading in. I may still do it. But, you know, ever since I put it on the wrist after having not worn it for a while, I just haven't taken it off. It's super comfortable, easy to wear, slim, you know, unobtrusive, and, you know, everything that I think that, you know, a Royal Oak should be.
Honestly, I feel like you need to get yourself a Vacheron Overseas Chrono Gen 2, and you've already got the 59.8. Oh, you do? Okay.
I have a Steep Stream.
Then you literally just need this to complete your trio.
Yeah, so, but, no, I mean, the question always was am I going to, if the two are sitting in the drawer, am I going to pick up this over the 5980? And my answer was always no. But until I started wearing this again, you know, they do fit and wear very differently.
So we got a lot of interesting questions coming in. I want to acknowledge you guys joining us. First was Robert Dixon from Scotland. Guys, we are back in live. Thanks for joining us in our first live show of the year. Andre Gutierrez from Guatemala joining in. Lavishly Fat, I don't know who you are, but I love the name. Giants fan from up I-95. Edward Ledden from Sweden. I'm never going to mess your name up again. I see we have an interesting question coming in. This is from Robert Dixon asking, who does the least expensive perpetual calendar? Bought new?
Apple Watch?
Well, I think that's cheating. If we're not counting quartz, I would say probably Frédéric Constant. In steel, sub $10,000, manufacturer movement perpetual calendar, that's probably the least you're going to pay. Could you get one for less? You could probably find an IWC 3750 Da Vinci Chrono perpetual for less, but again, we're talking about apples to apples new watches. It's probably Frédéric.
Yeah, I think I have to agree. I mean, again, it's one of those things where I would really have to go through the brand list and take a look to see if there's something that's just not you know, not hitting me, but you know, based on what I've seen, I would probably agree that it's a Frédéric Constant. It's probably going to be one of the least expensive.
I would also say this, guys. Remember, once you start trying to trim costs and buy the cheapest new watch, you really overlook the opportunity to buy a very deluxe pre-owned watch. For instance, for $10,000, you're not far off the steel version of this watch. This is the 37mm JLC Master Perpetual. This was an awesome series during the 1990s that put it all together. Traditional size, beautiful proportions, a fully coordinated perpetual calendar module. This is the same module that's in my watch, and absolutely gorgeous.
Let's move that hour hand there so they can take a look to see the year.
Yeah, absolutely. There. Absolutely.
So, big fan of this watch. I think that this watch honestly encompasses a lot of what people love about Jaeger-LeCoultre. It's extremely wearable, iconic, slim, in-house caliber, great price point. And I think that that's become synonymous with the brand, and it's one of the reasons why it's you know, a haven for people that want you know, their first really nice Swiss watch. Not even their first nice Swiss watch, but a nice Swiss watch.
Yeah, I would say they're a great brand because whether you're looking at one of the master compressor dual-matics for around $5,000, you're looking to get into the brand. By the way, you can also get the sector dial master control for $5,700. So accessibly priced watches. Or you can go to them for a $2 million grand complication and buy the Ibris Mechanica Grand Sonnerie. There's literally anything, and they have great value pre-owned, good values new. Either way, you're going to get a great watch. But I feel when you're looking at a company that has a historic catalog this huge, pre-owned is kind of the way to go because everything they've ever made is in the pre-owned market. The current collection is all that's available new. So that's how I've always looked at it.
Yeah. No, and one of the big changes from this iteration to the watch to the new iteration of the watch is I believe that the latest iteration has the full date.
Yes.
As opposed to just the 2 digits.
It does. It has the full millennium, century, decade, and year. I'll also say this, the newer version is beautifully balanced, and it's nicely sized. I think things got a little bit big during the 2000s. For me, this is the biggest, you know, conventional precious metal round watch I'd ever wear. I wouldn't want to be wearing something 43, 44 millimeters in precious metal. This 41.5 in platinum is just about perfect. I think JLC, after the excesses of the 2000s, pared back.
Does yours have the date aperture?
Yeah, it does.
Not the date, the year.
It does have the year and the decade. It doesn't have
the only downside
4-digit.
with that is similar to IWC in that if you go forward too much, you're screwed.
Yeah, but here's the nice thing about this is how JLC did it that makes it better and more practical than IWC. Everything is done through an adjustment on the flank of the case. Whether it's my watch or this Master Perpetual, they separate the calendar change mechanism from the crown so you don't accidentally pull it out looking to set the hour ahead and roll forward 3 months.
But if you do go too far, does it have to go to the brand? I believe it does.
I mean, how far is too far? If you set it a few days ahead, just let the watch stop.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, the one of the biggest things we look for on calendar watches like this and the IWC Portuguese Perpetuals, I guess even, you know, pretty much any of their Perpetuals, is, you know, when you look at the year and it's like 2,131 because the person just kept going.
That's the problem with the IWC system. When you're making all the adjustments through the crown, mistakes can be made.
And it has to be completely synchronized too.
Yeah,
that's the other
also true. And I have to emphasize that another thing I've looked for in the past when evaluating pre-owned perpetual calendars with the sequential system, look when it stopped. If a watch stopped in 2005 with that system and it comes in today, you're looking at thousands of little stabs at that pusher adjuster to get it in spec. That might have to go back to the manufacturer too. So if you've got one of these, don't let them stop for too long. All right, so all sorts of interesting stuff coming up tonight.
Hi, everybody. We've got here questions regarding the favorite limited edition Omega Speedmaster Go. You know what? Like, we've got here Philip Hayden, the Snoopy is great for the nickname alone. I'm a huge fan of the Snoopy watch. I was a huge fan of it when it came out. I was a huge fan of it when it started selling for 2x retail, and then I was a huge fan of it when it started selling for 3x retail. So it's probably one of my favorites. You know what? For the novelty alone, I think for the uniqueness of it, for the, you know, it's almost like a brash move to make that watch. And I actually also have to give Omega credit, hopefully not undue credit, because you never know what comes, but they haven't beaten it into the ground yet, and there hasn't been about 5 other variations.
I'll be honest with, they spent a good decade plus between silver Snoopy watches, and when they did a second Snoopy, they didn't just make a second one. They had hand engraved sterling silver on the back, on top of an enameled case back, on top of a very quirky dial with a lot of charm. It was like a little comic strip on your wrist. The Snoopy 2 was so much better than the Snoopy 1 that it was truly the right time and the right occasion to do a sequel. Like, if every successor to the Silver Snoopy is that much better than the original.
When you look online, you know, they've completely disappeared. You know, we actually just sold one, the last one that we had in a long time, for $20,000.
Yeah, and that's amazing because there was a markup when they came out. I thought, okay, well, whatever. Once the hype is over, the buzz is faded, there'll be something new. Nope, never happened. about as solid an investment as you can make outside of Patek Journe and Rolex.
I mean, others, I mean, again, I actually think the Speedy Tuesday was beautifully done. It was really nicely executed. I think that for a brand launching a watch, selling it at retail out of their boutiques, I thought they did a nice job. What else? The re-edition in the box set that came with, the Rail Master, the
Yes,
Seamaster.
the 60th anniversary,
The 60th
the
anniversary,
trilogy.
I think, is beautiful. For me personally, that's probably the one that I would want to pick up right now if I was picking one up. Simply, I like that it's throwback. I like that, it's got again, we throw the word vintage around, but it has a vintage feel to it without having to go back and actually get an old one.
Okay, I think my favorites, relatively recent in both cases, are probably going to be the first Omega in Space, the numbered series from 2012.
Great watch.
That was a wonderful watch, and it had all the magic and allure of a limited series, despite not being
Are they
limited.
still making that?
No, and they're not making it. They still catalog it.
Yeah.
I don't think they're still making it. Because the logical successor to that watch, and the other edition that I just loved, was the CK2998 of 2016. The fact that they didn't create a straight-up line-for-line, detail-for-detail tribute or re-edition watch really pulled my heartstrings. It had a lot of colorful tones, a lot of playful gestures. It was a nod and a wink to the original CK2998, which was the first Omega in Space, so it's got some overlap with that other watch. I thought both of those were really sincere and heartfelt, and I also felt like they made sufficiently few that they never became the contemptuous familiarity, the watch that just pops up all the time, is available in multiplicity, online, marked down. They both feel special to this day. They've stood the test of time.
So, yeah, I mean, again, I think that the Speedmaster in general, and any watch collector would probably say that it's A, it's iconic to the brand, and B, it's one of those watches that if you were building out a collection, somebody said, oh, what are like the 10 watches I should have? Like, one of those 10 would probably be a Speedmaster.
And I'll also say this, the old, the CART Speedy Reduced Limited Edition CART Championship Auto Racing teams.
I was waiting for you to bring out, the obscure one.
The weird one?
Yeah.
I really like that.
It was only for, like, the Budapest market or something like that.
Yeah, and if you can find one that was actually given as a gift by the Newman Haas team, like with the documentation to support that, really cool watch.
Yeah, call us if you have one. So we've got some great watches on the table tonight. Why don't we start off with a bang?
Yeah, why not? Let's go with our big bang, but not a big bang, so to speak. This is my favorite watch on the table, and that's despite the fact that there's a gorgeous rose gold JLC Master Perpetual. This is the Audemars Piguet Tradition 26051 PT. This is a watch that you could have missed if you didn't look closely enough. Based on a reference from 1926 in the Audemars Piguet Museum. It's an ultra-thin, let me just show you how slim that is, 8.6 millimeter thick, John Schaefer case, perpetual calendar that's powered, first of all, you can see that glorious DeLorean-style vertical satin finish dial with the hand-applied rose gold Breguet-style Arabics, cathedral hands, handmade cathedral hands. The details are there in rose gold to match. And then this is the Audemars Piguet caliber 5020. It's got a 2819 perpetual module. This is a 36 millimeter Frédéric Piguet 151 pocket watch caliber from the first third of the 20th century. It's 1.9 millimeters thick. It beats away at 21.6. You can see that balance wheel is almost a third of the diameter of the entire movement. This is old school. Back in the day, Rolex used to use this movement in its pocket watches, and it's finished to a standard you will not find on any vintage watch. Absolutely immaculate. All the pieces are big, beautiful, easy to appreciate without a loop. I love that, but I also love the sheer slimness of it.
I love that it fits the case nicely.
Yeah. I mean, not only fits the case, but the case itself is 47.5 in platinum, and it wears a treat. I love this watch. I honestly love it. This is the kind of thing AP does so well that needs to get more recognition in spite of the Royal Oaks. I mean, that's the showstopper.
This is fabulous. I don't think we've had one of these before.
No, that's the first. And let me tell you, back in 2008 when that watch came out, it was priced accordingly at about $168,000. So that was the silly season. Today, much more realistically priced at, I want to say, 70 and change. That's a hell of a watch. That's one you will not see even at Red Bar.
So I will. I'll pick my favorite from the bunch. So we have the whole band. So we have an FP Journe, we have an AP, we have a Langenson, we have a Patek Philippe, and we have the Jaeger and another AP.
Yeah, we doubled up on our AP.
So we doubled up on AP. So lots of great stuff. I'll get us started with the FP Journe. So this is not FP Journe's first perpetual. It is actually his second. So for those that don't know, FP Journe actually came out with a perpetual years back in a limited edition of 99 pieces. This was done in titanium and rose gold. And from what I understand or from the stories, it was done because people were talking that FP Journe couldn't make a perpetual calendar. So, you know, obviously that's not the case. He made a perpetual calendar in titanium and rose that had a very similar dial to the, if not the same, to the calendrier. And the only way that you could tell the difference was on the back where it had the leap year indication.
It was very, very, very subtle. There were a couple of things that FP Journe didn't love about how he executed that watch. One was the overt presence of a pusher adjuster on the flank of the case. You could see it, and it was a bit too salient for him. So what he did, and which I was demonstrating just a moment ago.
It has yeah, go ahead.
Yes, he actually implemented a hidden pusher adjuster underneath the lug.
For the month.
Exactly, at 1 o'clock for the month. And with that pusher adjuster, that's the only control for the calendar that's external to the crown. Completely cloaked. The idea was to have cloaked complication, and it was achieved beautifully. Everything else can be achieved by turning the crown.
And what's so unique about this watch that many people may not realize is that it's an instantaneous perpetual calendar.
It is.
So what that means is you have a digital perpetual for date, month, and by instantaneous is that everything changes at exactly the same time. And in order for the development of this watch to take place, FP Journe had to develop a high-speed camera because the only way to tell that everything's changing at once is via a high-speed camera that's able to slow everything down. And this is how he was able to go through the development of the watch and in order to figure out the synchronization. And part of the time for the development of this watch was actually the technology in getting the camera to be able to even figure everything out. So, you know, he has that camera on his desk in Switzerland, and, you know, I'm sure it's a story that's associated with the watch, but it's absolutely beautiful. You know, amazing that you don't need a pusher. I think that that's for me, it's one of the biggest quirks on why I don't end up setting watches that require pushers. It's just because you never have one.
You know what I use, guys? Felt-tipped pen, pro tip, or a toothpick.
So I agree with Todd from the chat, you know, 100%. You know, everything is, you know, beautifully laid out. It's symmetrical. You know, one of the things that, for me, can look busy on the dial is the leap year indicator, the 1, 2, 3, or the 4, because it's pretty much a useless aperture for all intents and purposes, right? Like, it's pretty useless. So he has it here right behind the hour minutes hand. So pretty much hidden there, right behind there, you can see where it says 1, 2, 3, and 4. There's a tiny little
it's like a coaxial
hand there
stub
underneath
hand.
where it just points in the right direction. So minimalist, out of the way, you know, beautifully executed watch. I mean, again, you know, by now you guys can tell how much we like FP Journe.
And I'll add this, Robert Dixon, always active in the chat box. By the way, guys, we're taking your questions live. If you're just joining us, this is an interactive show. Otherwise, why do live? So chat away. There's a chat box in the live viewer. If you're not watching on a phone, join in. Robert asks, you know, how hot is Journe at the moment? And I typed Patek Rolex Journe. I will add one more. Richard Mille is very hot at the moment. Mm-hmm. I don't know how sustainable that is long term because he makes a lot more watches than Journe. And
about I think 4.5 times more probably.
Yeah.
What does he make, about 4,000 watches a year?
I would say he makes about 4,000 at this point. And they've grown year over year, every year. In 2016, when every other company had an apocalyptic year, they were in double-digit growth and pushing towards 4,000.
You know what? I mean, again, I think that they've taken market share from a lot of the brands in the high end. You know, we joke, but it's like the woman's 10-carat ring.
Yeah.
You know, it's like you see it on the wrist, you know what it is. You know, it's recognizable from across the room, and you know, they're.
I would also say this.
Statement.
With respect to Richard Mille, I would almost say, rather than the 10-carat ring, it's the man's equivalent of an Hermes bag. Like, it's the thing that you can tell, like Brian said, from across the room. It's priced beyond it doesn't cost too much money. It costs more than too much money. And, you know, it's a prodigious status symbol. With FP Journe, there's a ton of money going into watchmaking, and there is literally no model that contains a modified module, a modified base movement from outside the company put together in a case made by someone else or via an engineering consultancy outside the company. With Richard Mille, there's a much higher designer factor wrapped into the appeal of the brand, whereas with Journe, yeah, there's a designer factor, but the name is the actual designer of the watch. Nothing is being brought in from Vaucher manufacture, nothing is being brought in from Dubois de Praz. And if FP Journe needed that guy in-house, he would hire him and make him a part of the staff. But I can't even conceive of someone else designing the watch at Journe. So.
But answering Edward Ledden, what do you think of the Patek Sky Moon Tourbillon? Where does it stand in the market? So, you know what? I think it's a beautifully executed watch. I think that it was way ahead of its time. You know, it was interesting after they came out with the Grandmaster Chime. You know, it was the watch that came out that was that like $1.2 million watch that everybody said like, damn, it was the first time, you know, that it broke that $1 million barrier. And then I think that you saw a lot of other brands come out with watches that were as expensive, and then, you know, obviously Patek answered with the Grandmaster Chime. But the high-end Patek market, I think for those particular pieces, the Sky Moon Tourbillons, the 6D02s, which it has the, you know, the guilloche dial, the, you know, the all-engraved case, I think the high-end is actually doing quite well. We're seeing the market very dry on those watches. There's increased demand. I think Patek is actively controlling that market right now. I think that they're making sure that the watches aren't floating around. I think that they're being much more selective in who they're delivering the watches to, and I think that we've seen prices go up on those dramatically. I think in the middle of the pack, I think is where there's some opportunity to buy. So, but you know, not quite the $1 million price point, but
no,
you know, maybe about 500,000. But in that $500,000 to $700,000 price point, I think that there's some good buys to be made. But for the Sky Moons, it's you know, they're doing quite well.
Yeah. So basically, you know, if you're talking about a Sky Moon, it's almost its own special world when you're talking about a Patek that is a recent watch priced over $1 million. When Brian talks about softness in the mid-market, he means the 5074s, the 5016s, maybe even the 5004s, 5204s. Some of those watches right now, if you had the money to get into them.
And I guess soft is all relative because, you know, there's soft for other brands which are trading well off of the retail price. But, you know, soft for Patek, I think more than anything else, it's just a little bit less than record highs. And it offers a good opportunity to buy some of these watches when I think there's attention. The attention is on other things, and we've talked about in other episodes the amount of tension on vintage Rolex in particular, and I really do think that it's taken the attention away from some of the not quite as vintage, more modern era Pateks that offers people the opportunity a good opportunity to buy.
And when we talk about an opportunity to buy, it's like we're saying, hey, Berkshire Hathaway Class A shares are really cheap right now. In the context of paying thousands and thousands of dollars per share, it might be a good buy. Of course, with a 5016R, you know, you have to have the $500,000 to get in before you can realize the gain. So we are talking relatively speaking, but between like a 5711, you know, in steel that really doesn't have much room to move up against, you know, 20, 30% above list on the secondary market, that 5016 might be able to gain 5, 10, 15% over the next 5 years and do that sustainably. That's what Brian means when he says there's some headroom there.
Yeah. So, so great watches here. Which one should we pick next, you think?
I want to talk a little bit about Lange, because then from Lange we can go to...
We never give Lange any love.
We never do. Back in 2001, Lange did something that I love. They combined their standard of style and finish with a perpetual calendar. So we got the Saxomat caliber and the Langematic Perpetual. Now you recognize the dial. You can see it's got those gorgeous alpha-style hands with a little bit of lume. Not something you'd expect on a yellow gold dress watch, but yeah, it is lumed. Easy to read, if perhaps a little bit taxing to older eyes. The part that requires no special magnification to appreciate is the reverse. Now, there is a little bit of a seal sticker on top of this, so I apologize in advance. But how many companies are doing a double precious metal micro rotor? It's actually gold.
21 karat.
Yeah, it's 21 karat gold, and then it's platinum 950. So it's a platinum and 21 karat gold micro rotor set in a 3/4 style bridge with a hand engraved balance cock right there and a black polished swan's neck. Of course, you've got that gorgeous German silver. You know, I'm going to take that stupid sticker off for a second.
One of the other things that the watch has that I really do like is it has the zero reset mechanism.
It does.
That is patented to Lange, and which means that when you go to reset it, it sends the second hands back to 0 so that you can, accurately set the time to, the exact point.
Now, the thing I love about the Saxomat caliber is that it is everything you love about Lange, including the visibility of the movement with the convenience of automatic. It's one of the few watches they make that can be, the whole Saxomat series, everything that's a Lange-matic, can really be appreciated as thin watches. And thin automatic watches in the Lange historic catalog are not commonplace. These are always considered to be.
You also have the big date, which is very common to the German brands, but I think that it's certainly synonymous with Lange.
Now, of course, you can see the seconds hand at 6 o'clock. This is what Brian means when he talks about zero reset. Now, you wait for that seconds hand to come into view against the silver base. You pull the crown. Not only does it stop the second, but it resets to 0 for easy setting against a reference time. Now, it's important to remember that there's another feature.
I also happen, again, while looking at the watch, I am a fan that it has the sub-second hand. And they did a great job of almost hiding it in plain sight within the moon phase.
Well, there's also a little bit of juxtaposition there. That's a 122-year moon phase that needs to be adjusted every 122 years. And so you've juxtaposed the longest time interval displayed by the watch with the shortest time interval in the seconds. But I'm
sure everybody buying it, that's how they think of it.
Well, it's the poetry of subtlety. But I will say this, there's another feature along with the zero reset that you'll see in some contemporary Lange watches and also in the data graph, which is when the watch actually runs down, the movement is designed to stop the sub-seconds dial, if the watch has one, at the index at 60. So that's a little bit of Lange lore. And we'll do one last shot of that case back, because I think as far as case back shots are concerned, that's the shot of the night. They do it better than anyone.
Yeah, one of the questions that I think, collectors always ask and customers always ask is, they're made as well as the best of the best. They're made as well as a Patek Philippe or an FP Journe. They produce low quantities. They about 4,000 to 5,000 watches per year.
That's right.
It has the group behind it. It has Richemont behind it. It's got history to it. It has all the hallmarks of a brand that should just be exploding and impossible to get, and it's not.
With no entry-level models. There's nothing in there that's an $8,000 steel solid back sports watch. And maybe that's the challenge there. They don't have a lot of range. With Lange, there's not a huge range of styles, and I think a lot of people would say the Saxonias look like the 1815s, look like the Richard Langes.
Yeah, they all have a very similar look. Again, the Zeitwerk when it came out was, I think, ahead of its time, and it was beautiful. But the watches themselves, I think one of the biggest problems that they have, and we always come back to secondary market value and how a watch does pre-owned, is that the depreciation that occurs between buying one new and being able to buy one pre-owned is vast, and it's a lot bigger than what I think most collectors who want to invest that sort of money are okay with. And the question sort of comes down to, if you're going to be putting that sort of money into a Dado Perpetual or a Datograph or a Zeitwerk, and you see what they're selling for in the secondary market, the question you have to ask yourself is should you just be getting an FP Journe or a Patek at that point?
Certainly, if you're buying new, you have to take that into consideration. Like you're talking about a Dado Perpetual. If you're talking about like an 1815 Perpetual Rattrapant, you're talking about almost $170,000 watch. And if you can get into that watch pre-owned for under $100,000 and it's 2 years old, you're getting all of the benefits and really none of the drawbacks, which is why Lange at the moment is a great brand to get into pre-owned. unless you're talking about something that's so scarce that otherwise you wouldn't have a shot.
Like one of the Luminuses.
Yeah, like if you wanted to get into one of the Lumen models, they've only done 3 so far, or if you wanted to get into something crazy, like let's say they decided to do the steel Longa 1 again, you would probably have to be friendly with your Longa dealer to get in on the ground floor for that.
Exactly. And you know, some of the other decisions, you know, they'll roll out a 100-piece limited edition for the world, but but it'll be an amazing watch. And you know, you say to yourself, like, if all the other models are slow and you come out with a watch and only a 100-piece limited edition, and you probably could have just as easily sold 250, why not just make the 250 and give more people the opportunity to get into the brand? Because that's the goal here, is that you want to get watches on wrists, because then you start as they wear it, it creates the conversation of getting another one.
Yeah, I think the challenge that Longa has is a limited range. I'm not saying all the watches look the same to me. They're beautifully distinguished, and I think they're like the high-end Nomos, a strong style with important variations, but what they really need is more of a range. I'm not saying do a sports watch, I'm not saying drop the prices, I'm saying Longa needs a Chronomet Blue.
They need to find a Gerald Genta case hidden in the ground somewhere that they can dig out and make themselves a sport watch is what they need. But no, so moving on to PP, here we have the 5327. So this is their most, it's actually not their most current perpetual, but it is their, I would say, most updated version to an iconic perpetual. So the 5327 is call it the latest perpetual that's replacing the 5140. So, and the 5140, for those that don't know, replaced the 3940. So one of the biggest differences is the case size. So the watch is now 40 millimeters. So for a lot of people, this is what was missing from the collection. It was a larger perpetual, something a little bit more wearable, where it's almost a casual dress watch.
But not a full multi-grand complication.
Correct. You've got the micro rotor there. You've got the scallop case there, which is pretty much identical to the 5227, and it's the same movement, actually, that was in the 5140 and the 3940. So it's the caliber 240Q, which has been in production by Patek for about 35 years now. And sorry, it's 39 millimeters, not 40 millimeters.
But it's important to remember that this has always been the upscale. There have always ever been about 2 Patek Philippe automatic calibers in the catalog, and the 240 has always been the premium one. It's the one you tend to see in grand complications. Mm-hmm. It's the one you tend to see in the standalone perpetual calendars as opposed to the annual calendars.
It's the ultra thin, it's the gentleman's perpetual. It's the ultra thin perpetual.
And it's got a great tradition. It goes back to, I want to say, 1977. Last year was actually the 40th anniversary of the bass movement. And it's a grand piece because it's one of the few micro-rotor automatics that really has no winding efficiency issues. They use a 22-karat gold mass and ceramic bearings these days in the system. Still free-sprung, it's a Gyromax, and beautifully finished. The nice thing about it is, like the Saxomat, you get to see the full movement and you get the thin profile of an automatic. That's why this has always been the top-shelf automatic in Patek's catalog.
And I think that this is a watch that really hit home for a lot of people in the sense that it was needed. It's what everybody wanted for the watch to be. They wanted it to be larger. They wanted the Breguet numerals, the came out right away in rose gold, yellow gold, and white gold. It wasn't staggered. The
lovely cream lacquer dial.
The white gold has a beautiful sunburst blue dial. So, when people are looking for a more complicated Patek, and they don't want the 5496 and they just want something classic and iconic to the brand, the response always was, oh, but the 5140 is a little bit too small. And then the next option was the 5496, which is noticeably larger and quite different in terms of appearance. And to me, this hit that nail on the head in terms of what people wanted.
And they do a good job of paring back the visual mass of it. There's one more feature that I think really deserves to be called out, and it's the minimalism of the bezel here.
Mm-hmm. And to put it into perspective, the watch retails for, I want to say, around $87,000, and they sell pre-owned for probably around 60, just shy of 60, in the 60 range, depending upon which metal.
Gorgeous series, though. Well played. The 5320 is quite nice too. If you've seen that, that's the That's the interesting syringe syringe
I
hand.
have a photo of it that they can pull up.
Can we throw up the 5320 guy?
I never have the photos in there, but I do this time. So we have a 5320. What's interesting about the 5320 is, let's blow that up a little bit if we can.
Put it on the air compressor, guys.
Is that it too is an instantaneous perpetual. So like the FP Journe, all of these will change at exactly the same time. This is a watch that we've shown on the show already. You've got the luminescent syringe hands, the luminescent Arabic numerals, the cream lacquer dial, 40 millimeter white gold case. I mean, this watch is a knockout. It was probably one of the most desired watches from the show, and you know, it's one of the harder Pateks to get at the moment.
I think it's also important to note that that watch has as much character in the multi-gadron steps of the lugs and the bezel as it actually has in its dial, and it has a lot of character in the dial. The one thing I don't love about it, and I don't hate it, but it's just something I felt could have been improved. They did not go with the micro rotor caliber on that particular model. I would have liked to see a 240 as opposed to a 324 base, but a minor complaint. It's a great looking watch.
One of the other complaints that if you read the articles about the watch is that the case was all cut from one piece. What's the proper terminology for that?
Monoblock.
Monoblock. So, you know, it really doesn't bother me, and I think that, you know, it's one of those criticisms that most bloggers have to give because otherwise there would just be no criticisms. And it's sort of like when you have people that say something about the new iPhone and it's like, oh, it's this or that, or it could have had this, but yeah, but the whole world's gonna go and buy it, and it's amazing, and they're gonna sell for 1,000 over retail in China. So
there are so many bad watches in the world that nitpicking this is a waste of energy.
Yeah. So, but no. So beautifully executed, and you know, I think, you know, Patek is doing great things with their more complicated watches to, you know what, re-engage a younger audience to buying complicated watches, and I think to reinvigorate their current collectors into saying they already have a 5140, they have a 5496, they now, you know, they have 3940s. You know, what can they get that's different than what they already have that feels different? And it was that watch.
Yeah, definitely a step beyond. It's the quirkiest perpetual calendar I think Patek is selling.
Yeah,
I think that's probably the way to describe it.
We'll see it in rose gold black dial this year. But so final perpetual on the table, we have in 2015. Audemars Piguet released the 41 millimeter Royal Oak Perpetual in stainless steel and rose gold. So 4 iterations of the watch, silver dial and blue dial in both steel and rose. It has the updated case size from 39 to 41. You have the sapphire crystal case back showing the engraved rose gold rotor. To me...
Sorry guys, this one's dressed a bit.
Dressed, yeah. It's, you know what, the watch is beautiful, it's classic, and you know, I think that they did a great job with the execution. You know, my preference for the watch is actually with the blue dial, you know, but, you know, that's just me. I actually have a picture, though, of a prior version of the watch, if we could pull it up on the screen real quick, which is actually one of my favorite watches at the moment, and it's like a bucket list watch of mine to pick up one day, is the 39 millimeter perpetual calendar skeleton with the... as I said, the skeletonized dial. So amazing watch. I think that you're seeing more and more of these on the wrist these days, both in the steel and the yellow gold. These have definitely appreciated in value, and I'm a big fan of the watch. The reason why I like this watch more, honestly, is just the 39 fits me a whole lot better than the 41. I could just never get those 41 millimeters Royal Oaks. They just never look right on my wrist.
Yeah, I think that one, I want to say that's the 25829 ST. It's impressive because all of the value that's rolled into that watch is in the movement and the decoration of the movement and the finishing of the steel case and bracelet. Literally, the whole price of that watch, or a large proportion by industry standards, is actual manual labor added value, and I love that.
No, so it's actually, I mean, I guess it's all relative, but you know, by call it top brand standards, a Holy Trinity standards, it's priced right in the 60s. So for somebody who wants to buy a steel perpetual from Audemars Piguet in their most iconic case at this point, you know, it's not completely prohibitive.
Yeah, also refreshing, you know, with the, anytime you have the 2120, the old JLC 920 Bausch, the ultra thin automatic, the movement from the original Jumbo also powers the Perpetuals. You always have the reassuring knowledge that production rate is principally constrained by the capacity to make and decorate that movement. It's nice to see production constrained by that sort of human factor, as opposed to our distributors can't move enough, we can't ship enough.
Because they make so few.
Or we can't sell enough. Yeah, I mean, it's legitimately constrained by the fact that a lot of talent is required to make that watch. One thing I think we should mention that was a pretty major change from the previous iterations of the Perpetual to the current 41 is the addition of that 52-week indicator. This is a feature that's probably best associated with Oris of all companies, and also in the haut de gamme, Blancpain does a number of 52-week calendar watches. But the radial display on the dial, you can see it actually indicates the week of the year, and that was one of the principal changes when we went to the 26,574 reference right here.
You also have a beautifully detailed moon.
Yeah, it is quite photorealistic, and that's kind of a thing these days. Photorealistic moons. I don't know who started it, but I'm going to blame Omega.
Well, it wasn't Sarpaneva.
No, although he probably has the quirkiest moon.
I love his watches.
Well, he looks at the moon and he sees himself. The secret is, guys, it's his face. Look at his moon phase and then look at a picture of him. You'll know exactly what I mean. But reasonably priced.
Yeah. So we actually completely skipped it, but I had a photo of the first perpetual calendar that was ever produced.
Okay.
So we can get it up here on the screen, and it is called the Dolphus, after the original owner of the watch. It was sold for 11,000 Swiss francs back in the day, which back in the day was, obviously a lot of money. So it was auctioned in 2011 for $475,000. It is obviously, I don't know if you guys are able to see, it is a Breguet, and it was produced in 1936. So this is technically the first perpetual calendar movement designed for a wristwatch. After doing a little bit more research, it turns out that Patek Philippe, about 11 years prior, had made the foundation of a perpetual, but it was in a pendant in a lady's watch.
What did you say was the date on the Dolphus?
1936.
Yeah, Patek's first perpetual calendar.
I think.
Yeah, 1925. It was a perpetual calendar wristwatch, and I believe it was made from a pendant movement.
Correct. So Patek actually beat them to the punch, but the fact that it was from a pendant moved into a wristwatch case, I think certifies this as technically the first perpetual calendar wristwatch. But hey, who's asking? So it happens to be a beautiful watch, quite relevant today. If you look at current Breguets, I mean, again, they're not that different.
It's not bad. Actually, a lot of what we call the current-day Breguet style came from Daniel Roth during the 1980s when Breguet was owned by the Chaumet brothers. And a lot of the early 20th century Breguet was brought back into the catalog. And Daniel Roth also did a lot of work trying to transpose the appearance of Breguet pocket watches onto wrist formats. And to a large extent, the brand is still building on the work that he did. It's sort of an uncredited role at this point. But yeah, like Brian said, there's a bridge between the past and the present Breguet, and Daniel Roth, in my opinion, is that bridge.
It's another brand that could actually use a little bit of love right now, I think. Some new marketing. They need one good show. Like with any brand, we always talk about it just takes one good show to relaunch a brand. And FP Journe is an example. They've had 2 great SIHHs. If they have another good SIHH this year, it's gangbusters. And I'm highly confident, because I have a good idea of what's coming out from them, that it is going to be gangbusters. No different than Breguet. Breguet needs a couple good releases. It needs to tighten up distribution. It needs, I think, to change a few of their, the places where they're being sold. They need to tighten it up. And you know what? And if it takes drying up the market for a few years, then so be it. But their watches are beautiful. I mean, the Marine is a gorgeous watch.
They have a couple things going for them. First, Swatch totally threw Harry Winston, Jacques Hedreau, and Blancpain under the bus to make Breguet their spearhead for the luxury market. All those brands that were supposed to be the super premium in Swatch Group have basically, like I said, been cast aside and turned into redheaded stepchildren. So Breguet got the money and the initiative. They've got the Marine, so they have an aquatic watch. They have the Type 20, which is not just a legit pilot-style sports watch, but a watch with real history. Some of the only real history in any part of the Breguet wristwatch lineup. They've got the Tradition, which came out in 2005.
Freaking awesome.
Every version of the Tradition is an amazing watch. That should be their flagship. That should be what people are thinking when they think
You should see
Breguet.
that exactly. Like, I don't know if that should be in a sporty case, but like you should see that from across the room, and just be like, damn. Like, and do you know what? One of where did he say it here? Julian Luna said it best. They have no magic, and I think that that's like the right. That's the right word for it. It just needs a little bit of magic, and I think that you're going to see the brand boom again.
Yeah, I think they need to focus less on ladies' watches. I think they need to constrain supply a bit. And I'll be honest, I think they need to focus more on working with qualified, authorized distributors who are not factory boutiques. If you look at the strength of Patek Philippe, if you look at the strength of Rolex in the market, you'll see companies, even the strength of AP, which has as many strong authorized distributors that are not boutiques as they do factory stores. I think the key in luxury is to have those relationships that brand boutiques rarely build. And they rarely know the local market, and they rarely know local collectors. I think that's the missing piece with Breguet. I think some sort of point of contact with the customer that has a real resonant sense of the pulse of the collector.
Yeah, so maybe we'll have a Tradition in a marine case.
You know, I would say almost anything would work, Breguet. Just please let us know, because you have some amazing watches no one knows about. The 5717, it's the Horamundi travel time, dual time, with two separate displays and a mechanical memory. No one knows about this watch. Everyone who's in the game for an haute de gamme travel watch should be looking at this and maybe one other. We do. The thing blew my mind. It's finished perfectly. It's hand engraved. It's beautifully thin. I mean, it's mechanically brilliant. This is the kind of thing that should have been like a GPHG laureate.
It was when it came out, though.
Yeah,
I mean, it came out to fanfare, but you know, the issue is that it was a $70,000-$80,000 watch that people were like, more. That people were like, you know, why is this so expensive? And during, as you said, the transition period when watches were crazy price to then coming out and not being priced that way.
Yeah, so Breguet, all the pieces are in place. Some imagination about how to put them together. That's the missing link there. Otherwise, we love the brand. I'd say most potential in the ultra-luxury segment.
Yeah, them and Vacheron, as we've said. But no, so, you know, I want to thank everybody. Are there any other questions in the chat that we should hit before we call it a night?
No, I want to give a shout out to some of the guys who joined us. Triple D, Robin Rickett, I can see Hellfire Club 1000, great Marvel Comics reference, Joshua Polanski, Adam B, Marco, active in the chat box, and Captain Z, longtime viewer, Julian Luna, Weber fan. Guys, you've been with us. You are the backbone of what we do, and you are the best audience on YouTube. And you're not on YouTube, you're everywhere. That's the best part. So thanks for getting up early. Thanks for staying up late. Thanks for being with us tonight.
Yeah, thank you guys for watching the videos. Me and Tim really appreciate, you know, you guys spending the time and watching, and we also really appreciate your feedback. So if you have any advice or there's anything that you guys want to hear about on the show, please don't hesitate to contact Tim or myself. You know, we're always open ears, and we're always looking to, honestly, we're creating this content for you guys. So, you know, anything that we can do to make the show more special, you know, we're all ears. But thank you guys for logging on. My name is Brian.
I'm Tim.
And this is the Watch Insider. See you guys next time.